I'll continue on now with crossing the chasm in terms of how firms identify beachheads and what that means in terms of building a bowling alley of related segments. Recall from our normal bell-shaped curve of adoption that the chasm exists between the visionaries and the pragmatists. The bowling alley exists on the right-hand side of the chasm, and this little lead pin in our bowling alley is considered to be the beachhead. Crossing the chasm has subsequent phases, including inside the tornado and then appealing and reaching Main Street customers that I will not be going into during this particular video. In order to select a beachhead, one of the most important elements is to consider that particular target market's compelling reason to adopt emerging technology. So the idea of selecting a beachhead is inherently intertwined with how an emerging technology company crafts a value proposition. And the primary compelling reason for pragmatist customers to buy, some would say the only compelling reason for those pragmatic businesses, is that the adoption of that emerging technology for customers in that market segment will significantly lower their costs of doing business on a significant cost factor. We're going to be doing some examples of this shortly. Another reason that the technology would provide a compelling reason for pragmatist customers is because investing in the technology could significantly increase their revenue or earnings by using new technology. For instance, you might think of using artificial intelligence for personalization of offers to customers that would increase customers' responsiveness to those offers. Remember that the comparison of this compelling value proposition in terms of lowering costs or increasing revenue is compared to the incumbent's method of accomplishing the task that the technology is going to take over. And so in this case, it could be the cost of humans performing customer service, for example, or using the same offer for all customers as opposed to AI. So it's not comparing other technology vendors, it's compared to the current method that those customers are using to solve that problem. Compelling value propositions are documented quantitatively. It's insufficient for the emerging technology to say that it's faster, better, or cheaper than the incumbent, because pragmatists need to compute an ROI, and they want to know how much faster, because speed to market or shaving out the cost of employee work hours will save them money. How much cheaper? It has to be quantitative, and I'll be coming to some examples of quantitative value propositions in a moment. These compelling value propositions are critically important for pragmatist customers. I've already talked about the ROI consideration. More importantly, a compelling value proposition conveys that the vendor of the emerging technology understands the customer's business. So if we're talking about selling RFID chips to hospitals, we don't talk in terms of customers and theft. We talk in terms, I was thinking of a retail example, for example. For hospitals, RFID installations talk about patients and insurance and different types of language. Same with finance. It's a very different type of language than retail, for example. So one of the key reasons that this beachhead and the value proposition are so important is because it helps overcome the fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Remember that FUD factor from that we've talked about, by communicating that the vendor understands the industry that this pragmatist customer comes from. So here are a few examples. Accenture is a company that sells IT consulting services, and they charge a lot for those services. Their value proposition to Marriott hotels is an ad that they use to attract other hospitality customers. And Accenture says in their ads, we helped Marriott reach $7 billion in annual sales online so their guests can go offline even faster. So this clearly signals that Accenture understands Marriott's business, which is that they want to get hotel bookings around the world, and they want to do that through the Marriott.com platform as opposed to one of the many online travel services like Booking.com or Expedia that really cuts into Marriott's business. In addition, it realizes this value proposition signals that Marriott isn't in the business of booking online sales. They're in the business of hospitality, which means they want their guests to go offline even faster. They want to make it easier for their customers to book through Marriott than through some other platform. So this really signals they understand what business Marriott is in. And then, of course, the $7 billion is that credible. So ads should drive customers to the Accenture website to get more client testimonials and to get more inquiries, and also to document how these values, the value of $7 billion was derived so that it's credible. Core is a company that makes electronic energy management systems for big buildings. Your business can get 20% savings on heating and cooling costs by using Core smart thermostats. So again, heating and cooling costs can be a high percentage of cost depending on how many facilities or buildings a business has. And 20% savings is significant enough to offer a compelling value proposition, even if the investment in this technology, smart thermostats, is going to be fairly sizable. Similar value proposition here for Mercedes-Benz. Most small businesses who have a fleet would say that they can't afford Mercedes-Benz. And in this case, Mercedes-Benz is positioning their business fleets for transportation by saying that it offers 18% greater fuel efficiency and extended 20,000-mile service intervals that lower the maintenance costs. So all of a sudden, businesses who think, I'm going to go with a cheaper one, are going to realize that maybe this maintenance cost and fuel efficiency is something that would benefit them, and they would be willing to go online and find more information. So as we go through various new emerging technologies, it will be very important for us to have a very rigorous lens to assess what is the value proposition of emerging technologies for various new use cases and market applications. To make sure we understand this idea of a beachhead, it is selected because customers in that segment have a compelling reason to invest in the emerging technology. One thing we haven't yet talked about is whether it provides logical word-of-mouth relationships to customers in related segments. So like the bowling alley, the lead pin is going to, through momentum, knock down the pins behind it. We have to ask when we select a beachhead, how are we going to build our strategy so that the beachhead actually gives us access to other market segments where these people in our beachhead talk to other customers in other segments in the course of doing business? So we're going to add this consideration on now to our chasm strategy, this idea of building a bowling alley. Before we build the bowling alley, many business executives, particularly for emerging technology, where the technology can be used across so many diverse use cases, worry that If they put all their eggs in one basket, it feels risky and it would leave revenue on the table. But remember, it's not saying that you only pursue a single target market. It's saying that you start with a single target market to help jumpstart the word of mouth effect. And the benefits of starting with a single target market is that if a company, say an RFID chip company, wants to go after retail and hospitals and food markets, if you pursue too many market segments, it dilutes the firm's resources across those market segments. It's hard to get word of mouth because the customer needs vary significantly and they have different lexicon across those industries. And so it's really important to realize that this strategy has a lot of validity. So let's go ahead and look at how we build some bowling alleys and consider how word of mouth works across different industries within supply chains or even within disciplines like marketing. So the easiest way to develop a strategy is to brainstorm a list of all the possible use cases or industry specific, known as vertical marketing applications for a new technology, and to evaluate each possible beachhead use case or vertical marketing application in terms of the compelling reason to buy for pragmatist customers. And then to explicitly evaluate for a given beachhead who are the related market segments and how can we optimize word of mouth between those related market segments. This is an example that I used in an article for genomics. And genomics, as you know, is a type of technology used to provide whole genome analysis of an organism's DNA. It's a very powerful technique that's being used in agriculture, ecological restoration, wildlife conservation, and human medicine, for example. And in this particular case, mining is an industry that has experienced quite a bit of ecological degradation. And one of the hardest issues in restoring degraded landscapes are the seeds that are actually used to plant to revegetate those degraded landscapes. Seeds are critically important because they need to be climate adapted for climate change and for drought conditions, because what maybe was there before the mine might not be as viable in today's climate environment. So when we look at that as a beachhead, using the idea of an industry and a specific application, we can see that restoring degraded landscapes is also important for agriculture. We see a lot of soil degradation, for example, and ranchers and farmers, even cattle ranchers, are working really hard to think about how do we restore the health of soil and the cover cropping that were used. So the ecological restoration, the vegetation aspects are critically important. And then genomics can also be used not just for identifying climate adapted seeds, but it can also be used for monitoring the whole microbiome of the soil health, the seed health, the pollinator communities, are the bees visiting the flowers in order to get the pollination to occur. Genomics can be used for all of this, and it can be done in a much more cost-efficient way because sampling can be done not at the individual plant level, but by taking a sample of soil, water, air, and then running that through a genomics analysis to identify what organisms are actually there. Now, there are some fine-tuning adaptations to Crossing the Chasm that I'm not going to go into. I think you're probably getting enough of Crossing the Chasm right now. And that will end this segment of the material.